Did she know that there was going to be a breaching of the Capitol in advance that no one else knew? And how did she know? No, the reality is she's making up a fake story. Take a look at AOC's story. So this is amazing because when this story broke, no one caught this. And I remember I was tweeting, I was DMing with a journalist on X. AOC puts out this hour-long Instagram stream where she's like, I'm in my office, and then I hear boom, 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 and I go hide in the bathroom. Then I hear a voice, where is she? Where is she? And that's how she said it. And then she's like, I thought I was going to die or whatever. But it turned out to have been an officer who was evacuating her. The funny thing about this is she's framing the story as the rioters have made it to my office. They finally got here.
Like Gandalf, the book that he finds in
right. The first thing that happens is everyone immediately says, what? AOC's not in the Capitol building. And the fact checkers come out and go, actually, there are tunnels that connect those buildings. So she did reasonably fear that the rioters in the Capitol had made it to her office. And then I tweeted, I was reviewing the timeline to figure out when this story was. Her story took place 1 hour before the Capitol was breached. So did she know that there was going to be a breaching of the Capitol in advance that no one else knew? And how did she know? No, the reality is she's making up a fake story. I get some journalists, I think it was from Huffington Post, being like, no, that's not correct. And then I showed the story, showed what she said, showed the timeline of when she ordered. The officer who knocked on her door was evacuating because of the pipe bombs. No one knew that the Capitol was going to be breached 1 hour later. Mm-hmm. So she made up a fake story where she was like, after everybody had already witnessed the Capitol being breached, she pretended like she was terrified it was happening, and people ate it up, and they bought that lie. Yep. Unless, okay, no, guys, I'm sorry. I should not accuse AOC of being a liar. She knew that rioters were going to breach the Capitol the whole time because there was a conspiracy and they had planned for it. Is that the response? Yeah. No, she's a liar.
My favorite line from that live stream of hers was where she said, I knew I was in mortal danger in a general sense, but also in a very specific sense.
Has Thomas Massie told you his story about that day? Because he was in his office.
I'm pretty sure he did.
Did we just find Kamala's speechwriter?
It's hilarious. A couple of the key points of Massie's story is that when they got the announcement, because it went out to all of them that they were locking the buildings down. The House and Senate office buildings were going to be locked down, and because specifically the bombs were found in near proximity to those House buildings, office buildings. And so he told his senior staff, he said, if you don't get out of here, you're going to be locked in here for 12 hours, so we're not getting out. So he told his senior staff to leave, and they wouldn't leave. And he's like, guys, I'm telling you, you need to go now, go home. And his staffers are going, boss, is this a loyalty test? And he goes, no, it's an IQ test. Get the hell out of here now. and then he said, of course, everybody knows that I'm the only guy here. He said, all of my Democrat, office neighbors, he said, they know that I've got guns in here. So he said, so they started sending their staff over, and they got locked into my staff. And of course, him being an engineer, what he did is, because they didn't know if the building was going to be breached, they had no idea. But so what he did is he took a milk crate and he taped 2 iPhones on each side with the cameras going out and put it outside the door so he could monitor the hallways and see who was coming down. I mean, he's incredible.
I just got a really great idea for a movie. J6 Zombie Apocalypse, and it's January 6, 2028, and zombies have overrun the Capitol. And the Democrats are panicking, and they all huddle inside Thomas Massie's office, and he puts a bandana on, and he spins a Winchester, and he's like, "Let's go!" And the zombies are in the halls of the Capitol building.
It's a great idea.
Massie's the only one with guns.
In our movie, we reenacted the insurrection with Lego guys, and we also paid an animator on Fiverr to recreate the insurrection for us. So it's very, very serious journalism. Yeah,
awesome.
Well, what do you guys think? We're going to have January 6, 2.0, 2025?
Oh. No, look, that if we're going to characterize it as that was our bad day. You know what I mean?
We will if Trump wins. If Trump wins, we will have they will burn down D.C. if Trump wins.
But that'll happen.
November. The left, Antifa.
Yeah, that'll be November 6th that'll happen.
Yeah. We're not going to know who won on the 6th.
Well,
they got to bring all the mail-in votes in to make sure that they have just enough to beat Trump in Pennsylvania.
Oh my gosh!
And the mountains of North Carolina.
Yeah,
but the left will definitely riot if Trump wins. I'll be up here for his inauguration.
I mean, they rioted the first time he won. So I was there on the ground January 20th, 2017. And there's roving bands of hundreds, 300 to 400 black-clad individuals setting fires, smashing windows, running through the streets, knocking things over. Police are pepper spraying people. And this is the kind of stuff that I covered frequently. Luke Rudkowski was there as well. And there was this one point where I can't remember what street we were on. The police started to line up. And so there's two choices you can make. You can charge the police line. Well, that's risky because now you are putting yourself in with the rioters by charging a police line to break through. But my assumption usually is when they form a line, get out of the way of the police. Don't stand in front of the line. They're going to start pushing through. Yep. So I went into a stairwell. Fortunately for me, all the rioters followed me into the stairwell and surrounded me as I pressed up against the door. And then the cops formed their line around that stairwell, roping in, kettling in about 200 to 300 people.
Jeez.
The first thing I did was, so the police make the announcement, you have all been arrested, you are under arrest. And so I moved my way to the far right side of this area of the rioters. And calmly, I looked at the officer to my right, and he's standing with his baton out. I was like, officer, I'm going to take my backpack off and just put it down. I'm a journalist. I've got my press credentials. He says nothing. I said, just want to let you know what I'm doing. And I slowly put the bag down. And then I ask if any of you guys could call over a supervisor or fan them over. I am a journalist. And one of the cops looks at me and he nods a little bit. And then he yells something. And then he looks over at a guy and he goes like this. Officer Washington, I think his name was, walks over and he's like, what's going on? And he points at me. And I was like, excuse me, sir, I'm a journalist. I'm a reporter. I have my press credentials. He goes, no, you're all under arrest. That's it. And I said, I'm just letting you know. That's what I have to do. And he's like, whatever. He walks away. A young Asian reporter for a local news outlet is also there with her camera guy, begins saying the same thing, like, we're reporters. Why are we here? They call the same supervisor over. And he says, nope, you have all been arrested. You are not going anywhere. And I looked at him and I was like, just letting you know is what we have to do. Finally, then, this young reporter, she's on the phone. Her newsroom, I'm assuming what happened is calls the police and says, why have you arrested our well-dressed, makeup-clad street reporter with a cameraman? And so he walks over and he goes, who's the journalist? And then they wave, and then I wave, and a couple other people who are now realizing what we're doing smile and wave. And he says, he looks at us, you guys have your press credentials on you? And everyone says yes. And he goes, okay. He pulls out the TV reporters first. They show their cards and he goes, go that way, get out of here. Then he pulls another person out and I look at him and I wave and he goes like this and he goes, show me your credentials. And I have like 7. Like I've worked for a bunch of companies. And then he's like, okay, you can go that way. Here's a funny thing. So I tweet, I tell the story. I said, they arrested me. They told me 3 times I had been arrested. But fortunately, this local TV station called it in. And because they had to get pulled out, he said, okay, I'm going to get the rest of the journalists out too. There were some journalists, will do air quotes, they're going to get so mad when they see this show, by the way, who did not get pulled out. And they said, it's BS. You know, some of them were like, they must be feds. How did they get released and we got arrested? I'll tell you, because the journalists were in the front of the crowd of rioters, screaming in the face, spit flying, F you mother effer, you can't arrest me, I'm a journalist. And the rest of us went over and were like, we're terribly sorry about this. We are professionals and we have been caught up in your arrest here. And so they go on a claim that it's a conspiracy or some other nonsense. But here's what ends up happening. Around 200 and some odd arrests of that crowd, they'll get processed. They're all wearing masks. The federal government cannot prove who individually committed a crime. So the first thing that happens is a couple of these guys start taking plea deals. And the lawyers for the activists start telling all of the activists, stop taking deals. They cannot criminally prosecute you, fight it. And so what happens is, in a couple of the cases, the defense successfully argues, did you see my client start a fire, smash a window, commit a crime, or in other ways break the law? And they said, yes. How did you identify them? He's wearing a mask. Well, there was a black-clad individual wearing these clothes, and they're like, is it reasonable to assume that with all of these people wearing the same clothes, you could not determine who actually was? Reasonable doubt. So the government changes their strategy and says conspiracy to commit the crime. And the judge is like, you cannot charge a group of people with conspiracy for wearing the same clothes. So they all end up getting the charges dropped, file a lawsuit against the federal government, and won over $1 million in cash. Mm-hmm. So the insurrectionists in 2017, they torched There was a limousine driver, a private contractor. He was an immigrant. They torched his limousine because they're like, screw the rich people. It's a guy who bought a vehicle. He rents it out to drive people around. They set fires in the street. They smashed windows. They were ransacking public property, flipping over garbage cans, and they got paid cash. That's the difference between the left and the right.
It's insane.
But I will tell you this: a large component is the right doesn't organize. They did not have masks. They had no plans. The difference is, I hate to say it, but anybody who studied this stuff knows that as much as the TV would like to tell you otherwise, the terrifying reality of crime in this country is that premeditated murder is almost never solved. You know what police are looking for. And so they're saying there's a serial killer maybe up in Long Island. It's been going on for decades because they're planning this on how to avoid detection. Most murders we get are passion. Someone in the heat of the moment does something bad, and then there's a spattering of evidence. For Antifa and the far left, they plan their crimes in advance, well organized, making it very difficult. They exploit the system so they can't be charged. And on January 6th, a bunch of doofy dotards and right-wing dudes with no real plans walked around, ended up in the Capitol, some doing bad things, many just walking around, but their faces are all clearly visible. Many of them aren't wearing masks. They're trying to help the police. Complete disorganization ends up with all of them mostly getting, or I shouldn't say about many of them, going to jail for long periods of time, whereas the left got paid cash.
Yeah. And I use that January 20th of 2017 as a comparative all the time. I've debated other mainstream media journalists about this, and we go back to the NPC brain is that they cannot see the difference between what's going on. And the difference is, very clearly, you're talking about a leftist system in a leftist city. And when we say leftist, we're not talking about marginally. This is 95% Democrat voters there. And that's who the jury pools are made up of. That's who the courts are made up of. Everybody that works there, that's who it's made up of.
There's a reason they kept all the cases in D.C.
That's exactly why. And so when you start seeing those cases from 2017 being dismissed, you started seeing hung juries, you started seeing acquittals, and then the DOJ just went, crap. They threw up their hands and dismissed the rest of the cases. They dismissed them, over 200 cases after they realized they weren't going to win. And then, as Tim properly pointed out, then they started awarding them money.